A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
Michal Fruman, the daughter-in-law of the late Rabbi Menachem Fruman, was recently stabbed by an Arab youth who had infiltrated the Jewish town of Tekoa. In an interview on Israeli Army radio, she said that she was trying to understand what Hashem was trying to tell her. Does the rabbi have any comments?
I too was somewhat taken aback by some of the things that this poor woman said, and I wish to state at this point, before I say anything else, that of course I wish this woman only well, and I wish her refuah shalema, and I do not think she deserved what happened to her, but that doesn't mean that we cannot consider what she said and the views that she expressed, and that we are not able to criticize if we feel that it is necessary to do so. And the fact is that a number of people have mentioned to me the nature of the statements that she made in this interview, and someone in fact printed up the transcript of the interview, and I have here a few comments. I wish to read them first. At one point she said, and this is the comment that was referred to in the question, she said in Hebrew, "Lo mevina ma rotzim mimeni me'ashamayim, ma ba'im lahagid li." I do not know what is wanted of me, what in heaven they are trying to tell me. That was statement number one, which is interesting and perhaps deserves an answer, and we'll try and supply perhaps such an answer. Second of all, she mentioned in this interview, and I quote, she related first how the Arab youth carrying a knife entered the store in Tekoa, where she was trying to buy something for her daughter, and the owner of the store, the woman who owns the store, understood who this person was, that he was an Arab who came with the intention of attacking and probably, almost certainly with the intention of murdering Jews, and she began to raise her voice at him and told him to leave, and began to call the security forces. And the woman who was in fact stabbed in the end, Michal Fruman, said as follows, "Pahalti she'mi'atza'akot shela hu yibahel v'yaseh ma'ashuhu." I was scared that because she was raising her voice at him and shouting at him and telling him to leave, that because of that he would do something violent. That's also a rather strange thing to say, it strikes me, particularly since she herself mentions that she saw that he was carrying a knife. Then, furthermore, in this interview, she says that the youth in question, having entered the store, he seemed a bit confused, which is quite possible, and even evil people, even the most evil of people, have a human side to them, and they can be confused, they can be scared, they can be unsure of themselves. He entered the store, he said a few things in Arabic which they did not understand. He turned around and began to leave. And this woman, Michal Fruman, who saw that he was carrying a knife, as she says in her own words, didn't think it was the right thing to do to hide or to, if possible, attack him or to call for help. She thought that he was perhaps confused and looking for something, he wanted something, and she in fact walked towards him, not away from him, towards him, and asked him, and she says as follows, "Sha'alti oto, ma ata oseh, ma ata tzarich." What are you doing here? What do you need? What are you looking for? And then, only then, did this Arab youth turn towards her and began to walk deliberately towards her. At this point it was obvious, she said, that he had decided to do something to her, and he began to walk towards her and raised the knife, and he tried to stab her once, and she evaded the first strike, and then she fell backwards as a result of the evasion, and then when she was on the ground he stabbed her once in the back of the right shoulder, and then, for reasons that we will never know, he left it at that, even though he could very easily have slaughtered her on the spot, which she herself also admits, and ran off, probably because he was scared and not sure what to do next. There's one other thing that she said in this interview which struck me as very strange. She said, "Hu haya nir'eh avud." He looked lost. He looked as if someone had sent him, or as if he had come to prove that he had come to do something, but not necessarily did he intend to kill me. She says, "Im ratza la'arog oti," if he wanted to kill me, haya mashkia bazeh ktzat yoter, he would have made a greater effort, because he stabbed me once, she said, and then he left off and disappeared, and therefore she suggests that he didn't even want necessarily to kill her. These are some of the statements made by the victim of this murderous attack just a couple of days ago in Tekoa. And for the record, if anyone wishes to check or doubts the quotes that I just read, one can hear the entire interview verbatim on the SoundCloud website of Galei Tzahal on the internet. When I heard this interview, the Gemara, the Talmud Bavli, Masechet Barachot Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, came to mind, where Rabbi Amir says, "Mi she'en bo da'ah," or da'ath, according to some versions, a person who has no understanding, no wisdom, if you like, asul rahim Allah, it is forbidden to have mercy on him. There is another statement, similar but not identical, which appears in many versions of Vayikra Rabbah, Parasha Aleph, Siman Tethwel, and it appears the origin of this quote is apparently in Seder Eliyahu Rabbah, Perek Shishi. It says there, Tamid Chachamim she'en bo de'ah, behema tova himenu. A behema is better, an animal, a beast without any wisdom or knowledge or understanding is better than a Tamid Chachamim without understanding. It strikes me that it is not a coincidence that this young woman, this 30-year-old young woman who happened also to be pregnant, is the daughter-in-law of Rav Menachem Fruman, who was known for insisting that it is possible and necessary, in fact, that we are required to spend our time talking to our Arab enemies. It's well known that he used to spend time talking to religious leaders identified with the Hamas, because he believed that we must be rodafei shalom, we must seek out peace at all costs. I, in fact, once had a lengthy conversation with him in the wake of a shiur that he gave where I was present, during which shiur he took 1.5 lines of Rav Kook in the book called Oroth, and he made a drasha on what Rav Kook wrote there, because it really has nothing to do with the topic, with the point he was trying to make. And based on this 1.5 lines in Rav Kook, which he gave his own particular spin to, he concluded that therefore it is possible and necessary, and there is no other choice, but that Jews and Muslims live in Eretz Yisrael together in peace, and therefore we must strive for this. After the shiur, I approached him, I spoke to him, and I asked him a number of questions. I asked, based on certain halachic sources, if he was familiar with this particular source or that particular source, and he very honestly answered me that he was not familiar with these sources. And then I asked him if he thought that one could make such pronouncements with practical, real-world ramifications without knowing these halachic, hard and fast sources, and rather base oneself on the fact that one would like to have peace, and to take one line out of Rav Kook and twist it in a certain manner in order to prove one's point, if that is an acceptable way to study and implement the Torah. To which he looked at me somewhat bemused and smiled. He didn't really answer me. And it was then that I concluded that there is a certain lack of stability, a certain lack of reasonable, rational thought behind the kind of positions that this person was known for espousing. And the same, I am sorry to have to note, is quite plainly true also of his daughter-in-law, who is obviously was obviously influenced by him and by the son of Rav Fruman, to whom she is married, who also, by the way, was interviewed and repeated some of these ideas, and said explicitly that he also follows in his father's footsteps. Because a woman who says that, and she says quite plainly in the interview, that I saw him holding a knife, and yet my eyes saw, but I refused to believe, and I did not want to believe that he came with the intention of stabbing people. What can one say to this kind of denial of the testimony of one's own eyes? Not to mention the fact that anybody who has lived in Israel over the last 4.5 months, not to mention the last several decades, or the last few years at least, should know very well exactly what an Arab has in mind if he happens to be standing near you and he's holding a knife. So we are talking about a mindset which is bereft of common sense and is unable to deal with reality. And this is precisely what the Chachamim had in mind when they said that Misha en bo de'a asul rahim alo. It is not possible to take a compassionate view and be understanding towards a kind of philosophy and mindset which insists on imposing upon reality one's aspirations and wishes, rather than dealing with the reality as it is, and having understood the reality, then applying to that reality the wisdom and the instruction of the Torah. This is exactly how I see this this philosophy of Rav Fruman and those who think like him. They refuse to see the reality of the Ishmaelim, to understand who they are. They refuse to acknowledge what the Torah says about the Ishmaelim. They will be a wild, lawless nation, people who are always at strife with everyone else around them. They refuse to acknowledge that we are in a state of war with these people, and this is not the view of certain individuals amongst them or a minority amongst them, but this is the view, this is the feeling, the sentiment, and this is in fact even the raison d'etre for the majority, the vast majority of them, something which has been proved time and again in public opinion polls, in election results, etc., etc. And that is something which we cannot accept. We cannot agree with a person who insists on misleading himself and others because he would like it to be so. He would like there to be peace, and he would like to think that all people want peace as much as he does, and therefore he is willing to endanger himself and the entire Jewish people by presenting ourselves as weak and foolish and bemuddled and befuddled, and therefore act in a way which only encourages our enemies to increase their efforts to destroy us, rather than dealing with the reality as it is. One should also point out that it is not only these people who want peace. All normal Jews wish to have peace. All Jews wish to live in Eretz Yisrael in peace, in quiet, without danger, without strife. We are by nature a gentle people, and no one has the right to imply that they want peace more than somebody else. It is not a question of who wants peace more. It is a question of who is able to and willing to deal with reality, and who is not able to deal with reality, and who is willing to study the Torah and understand what it says and take it at face value, and not twist it, rather than twist it or give it a spin in order to make the Torah conform to one's particular ideology or inclination. Rav Kook, in his Perush En Ayah on the Agadot of the Talmud, on the Gemara that we mentioned, that he who has no de'ah, one should not have mercy or be compassionate towards such a person. One should not understand such a person or give them any legitimacy. Rav Kook explains that a person who would like to be shown mercy, but understands that really it's not his right to expect such mercy or such compassion, but he would like it to be so, if he's lucky enough to find people who will have mercy upon him, then he understands that these people are doing something which is very special and proper and beautiful, and he appreciates the act of rahamim for what it is. The mercy he sees as being a positive thing. But he understands that there is also midat hadin, there is also the concept of mishpat, of justice, of doing the right thing, of dealing with evil and not encouraging evil and not encouraging negative traits and behaviors in this world. And therefore he does not misunderstand the fact that people show him compassion. But a person, on the other hand, who has no diyah, who has no understanding, if you show him compassion when in fact he's not worthy of it, he assumes, he begins to train himself to think that he is in fact worthy of this compassion, and he begins to regard the concept of mishpat, of justice, of that which is true and necessary, and midat hadin, the concept of dealing with evil and negative issues in this world as they must be dealt with according to the Torah and according to common sense. He begins to regard that as something unnecessary, something superfluous. And that, says Rav Kook, is a reality of hefker. Rav Kook explains that when a person begins to misunderstand the Torah's instruction and the Torah's teaching regarding how we are to deal with different phenomena in the world, such as evil, crime, and other negative things, when that understanding is warped, and instead of understanding the need for the world to be run according to mishpat, justice, and din, and punishing evil and calling people to account for what they do, when those ideas are lost or warped, and instead one views everything through the lens of rahamim, of mercy, and of not calling people to account and not making people pay for their crimes and their sins, that, says Rav Kook, is a kind of hefkerut, that is a kind of light-hearted, foolhardy, thoughtless behavior, which can only lead to negative things. And this is the point that I wish to make here. People who insist on viewing reality through their own peculiar lens which they have produced for themselves in order to see the world as they wish to see it, and they wish to propagate these ideas and educate others to think in the same way, such people are not to be tolerated. Such ideas are a distortion of the Torah, a distortion of the truth, and lead to great suffering. In this case, it could have led to the death of Rav Fruman's daughter-in-law. As it happens, it was Hashem's will that it not be so in this case, and Baruch Hashem that it was so. But this is a nes, and ve'en somechim al hanes. We cannot rely on such miracles. And just the day before, another woman in another situation was murdered by another Arab youth, also happened to be wielding a knife, and she was not quite so lucky. In other words, the insistence upon not dealing with things rationally, not being realistic, and not taking the Torah at face value, but rather interpreting and twisting things to mean what you want them to mean, and to view reality as you would like it to be. This is in fact a kind of crime, and we are not allowed to agree or be compassionate or understanding to such behavior and to such modes of thought, to such philosophies. This is a distortion of the Torah and distortion of the truth, and the price that we pay for such distortions is very, very heavy and great indeed. And with regards to the question that Michal Fruman was asking herself, what is Hashem trying to tell me? I would like to suggest the following answer. We read in Sefer Bamidbar, Perek Lamed Gimel, Pesukim Nun Gimel onwards, 33:53 onwards. V'horashtem et ha'aretz v'yishavtem ba. You shall inherit the land and dwell in it. And then it goes on to say, V'im lo thorishu et yoshevei ha'aretz mipanechem. If you will not drive out the inhabitants from before you, v'haya asher tothiru mehem, those you shall leave amongst you, will be lesikim b'anechem, there will be thorns in your eyes, v'lisnanim b'sidechem, and spears in your sides, musararu etchem, and they will give you no peace. They will harass you on the land in which you dwell. Perhaps that is a pasuk that this particular woman and many who think like her should consider as a possible answer to her question. In conclusion, I wish to mention something I saw in the book Hishukei Hemed on the Gemara Masechet Brachot Daf Lamed Gimel, where he says as follows, that a person requires da'ath, that is to say understanding. Any Jew requires understanding in order to live his life correctly. And when Chazal say that a person who has no da'ath, one should not have any understanding or compassion for such a person, they refer to a person who should know better, who had the opportunity to study, to learn, to know or to learn from others who know more than themselves. And therefore he goes on to point out and say as follows, that the greatest da'ath is very often to know that one does not himself possess a great amount of da'ath, of wisdom, of true understanding, which involves weighing up different ideas, notions, concepts, interests, etc. Different sources in the Torah, for example. Also, one may look at a particular issue and find different sources which may seem to be conflicting. They may in fact be conflicting, they may disagree, they may not. It depends how one understands the issue at hand. The greatest da'ath, it says in the book Hishukei Hemed, is to know that you, that is to say most people, do not necessarily have so much da'ath, if we are to be frank, and they should know, therefore, they should go and ask people who know more than they know. They should ask true Torah scholars who are known for their reasoning, their logical, rational thought, their knowledge of Torah, their upright behavior, their fear of Hashem, etc., and not known and people who are not known for being carried away by their passions, by their aspirations, by their desires for this or for that, for this agenda or this notion, for their desire for peace, for example, and people who allow such desires and aspirations to befuddle their thinking and confuse their view of reality. That is the opposite of da'ath. A person who wishes to live correctly has to know that he cannot be ruled by his passions and his will and desire to see the world as in a certain way, but rather one has to know all the relevant facts and concepts and halachot and ideas that pertain to that issue in the Torah. And if one knows the truth, that one is not fully capable of reaching the correct conclusion based on that knowledge, because one doesn't have such knowledge or such understanding, then one needs the anawah, the humility, to turn to those who do. And therefore the great lesson here is not to think that everybody, as is commonly said nowadays, according to the religion of political correctness and democracy, as it's called, that everyone is allowed to have an opinion. That is not true. According to the Torah, not everyone really is allowed to have an opinion, because not everyone has the wherewithal, the basis with which to form a reasonable opinion. People who know and people who have understanding, their opinions account for something. Opinions not based on rational thought, not based on a correct understanding and analysis of what the Torah says, and ideas not based on a correct view of the reality, that kind of opinion is worth nothing.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the Rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the Rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.